Zeeshan, thank you so much for getting on this call with me. It's really exciting to talk
Like,
to someone who's a musician as well as someone who runs their own label from Kashmir. Um,
mhm.
the first thing that I wanted to ask you about is that, music is often tied to, politics, such as reggae in Jamaica, grunge in Seattle, bounce in New Orleans are all tied to politics. And I was curious about how, you know, your identity and, the politics of what's going on in Kashmir, how has that sort of influenced your music?
uh, to begin with, I think everything is political, right? I mean, we can't segregate things that, I mean, even not taking a stand is taking a stand, right? So when it comes to Kashmir, it's like being brought up in an atmosphere, in a hostile atmosphere like we have lived in. You just don't understand it. I mean, it's normalized over the years that you think this is the normal. Uh, Getting up, going outside, and seeing uh, the armed personnel with guns, right? It seems normal to us, and then something happens. Somebody's killed. I mean, death has become so common for us that uh, just today, a guy called Babar Qadri, who was an advocate, passed away, and I was like, all right. I mean, there was not. As a human being, when somebody is dead, uh, ideally you should feel shocked, right? I mean, that factor, we have gotten so accustomed to death that it is more like a normal thing to us. So it's not a healthy environment to grow up in. So having seen, let's just say, people getting beaten up, people getting killed, people getting murdered, raped, disappeared, enforced disappearances, you get aware as you grow up. So it does affect how you think, how you behave in society, in a particular set of people. When I moved outside Kashmir to mainland and to Australia, I could see a direct contrast between how people live, how people react, and that's something we are not used to. Uh, that definitely does directly affect the way I perceive sound, the way I interact with sound, the way I imagine sound. So a loud thud suddenly is traumatizing for me. To few people, it might be like, all right, that's a nice, interesting sound. But to me, I get paranoid. What has happened? If somebody closes the door really hard, I get shocked, and it's not. It's not the. Uh, it's the kind of shock that where I'm like, I get stunned for a minute or two, and then I'm like, okay, no, it was just the door. So having grown up with such sounds, they do find a way into your art, right? And then uh, I have a simple philosophy regarding what I make. You reflect what you absorb. So I think this is what I've been absorbing all my life, and that's what is getting reflected. So that's my take on how politics gets somehow imbibed into music. I personally don't directly speak about the problem. I rather focus on speaking about the essence of the problem. I wouldn't talk about jails, I would talk about confinement, because then it becomes universal. There can be confinement, can be perceived in 10 different ways. How does somebody who is suffering, let's just say in Somalia, let's just say in Chile, let's just say in Palestine, how does he understand, how does that person connect to that sound which I make? So I think that's how I relate to politics, and what's the scenario here.
That's really beautiful. And that kind of leads into my next question. I was going to ask who and what are some of your musical influences, both sonically and like personality wise as well.
uh, it has been a long journey since I left high school. Uh, so in Kashmir, what happens that you end up listening to a lot of Pakistani music, uh, beat Coke Studio, beat Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Sahab, beat me, a lot of uh, that sort of a genre. Like you'll have that fusion rock happening, and then you'll have a little bit of pop, then you'll have kavalis. So my sort of pre-teenage and teenage sort of went into listening to that sort of music. I was not more into Western music at that point of time. I mean, when I talk about Western music now, it's a very broad. spectrum to talk about. Uh, and then I think at the same time I did listen to some Kashmiri folk music, which I could not connect to because we have this we have been accustomed to uh, keeping our own identity as the other and trying to fit into
Mhm.
this enforced Indianized way of living, and that has been a factor which got us close to Bollywood, and of course that was what was accessible. uh, so at that point of time it was I mean A.R. Rahman sir has had his music has been very influential, very much, and I would say a lot of there wasn't much of hip hop happening at that time in India. I mean, I don't even know if that was happening, but at that point in time, we used to listen to a lot of alternative rock and then hip hop, a lot of Nirvana, a lot of uh, Eminem, a lot of Tupac Shakur. So a bit of here and there, but not diving deep into it. The main transition that happened was when I joined music school, and then I got introduced to Western classical music, world music, and then there was different folk music from a lot of different places. And then I got introduced to experimental music, a huge admirer of John Cage. So John Cage's work has blown my mind. I mean, he has been uh, a huge influence. The way I perceive silence, it is sort of derived from his theories. Flip glass. I mean, the list is so huge that I can't. And then I started listening to some jazz. So John Coltrane. So that sort of influence came in, and then eventually what happened was ये सब कुछ सुनने के बाद, I mean, the sense of home was missing. So I kind of moved back to listen to more Kashmiri music, and I could find that, oh, this is, I think, where I should go back to in terms of understanding. So it all got fused in together, and then things keep on coming.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting how you mentioned that first you branched off to all these different kinds of music, especially going to music school, and then you sort of came back into your own like
Yeah,
cultural identities music. That's really interesting.
that's
Um,
also a political statement in that way.
yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It is. It's almost like it's like decolonizing your own
yeah,
like music taste.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, yeah, and your band RAMOS, they recently released a song called
Yeah,
I Love. Okay.
yeah, that's right.
And I took a listen to it, and it was really really beautiful. I was a huge fan, especially of the vocals. I thought they were very haunting and fit really well with the lyrics. And I thought something that was really interesting in the song is that it ends with this sort of chant, at least in the music video. And I
Yeah.
wanted to ask, what was sort of the band and your thought process behind adding that into the song?
So basically, Olive, it means calling, and it's part of a concept album that we have actually composed, but we are just slowly trying to record because it's really difficult to survive as artists, and it's been a really difficult year. We started when the whole world was shutting down,
Mhm.
and we decided to continue and push ourselves. But that's our personal journey. But regarding Olive, this song is pretty. It has its own history, and when I say history, it's evolution. I wrote it when I was in Australia. Then I moved back to Kashmir and opened my studio, and I collaborated with a couple of artists, and something happened to the song. It sort of evolved, and I still felt that something was missing. And then when finally Ramoos happened, all the puzzles, I mean, the whole puzzle was solved. I met Ayan, I met Shinu. Both added their expertise on bass and the percussion, and I felt that the song was complete. And the idea of the song, it's basically, I was talking about the album, right? So it's the first song where the protagonist start seeking, and if I tell you the whole idea right now, then the whole journey is going to get sort of compromised, but I'm anyways going to tell you, it's this protagonist who starts seeking out a journey, and then he addresses different stages of crisis, which lead which sort of start from personal crisis, and then where he ends up. and then there is hope, then there is decay, and then finally the reason of all these crises happens in the last song in the album, uh, which is the only direct song politically, let's just say.
Mm,
And the idea of using his political speech was because if you could read uh, at the end this subtitle, undecipherable political speech. I don't want to like outrightly say what he's saying,
mm,
but at the same time have this sense, because that sound, uh, it's not about what he's saying at that point of time, it's just what that sound does to the listener. You could pick up that sound and you could see that it's some sort of speech, and in given context of Kashmir you could understand what the speech could be from an oppressed person's point of view. So it's like being very subtle about things but not being outright.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think something that I thought was so interesting about the use of that audio sample was that it was distorted, where the production of the rest of the song is
Yeah,
very like
that's
clean, and
smooth.
you can hear every, instrument and the vocals very clearly. So I had to imagine that that was like very, very intentional to distort that political speech. Or
Idea
political.
is because an oppressed cannot speak out, right?
Mm,
I mean, they muffle their voices, and that's why that voice is not being able to come out.
mhm,
And the whole idea of the song itself, it's more like a dreamscape where the person doesn't know whether he's alive or dead, and then he's meeting these different people, and then he's trying to sort of engage, but there is no reciprocation from their end. And towards the end he ends up digging a grave, finding himself, and he goes into the grave, and then the similar self of his moves out, and he starts seeking his journey. So it sort of moves around in this very surreal narrative, which ends with a political speech. So I mean, you can connect the dots from there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I wanted to ask a little bit about how you got such a unique sound, at least for this first single, especially. Um, and I know you answered a little bit about your influences, but I was wondering, when you all came together as a band, how did you develop such a unique sound?
So me and Srinath, we know each other since 2015. And we met in a very funny way, but then that's beyond the conversation right now. uh the point is that when we met, we started jamming. We jammed, like, I guess, on the very first day, and we kind of liked the feel of how we were playing together, and how there's this natural connection that there's this intimacy between how we were playing music together. And slowly we got to know each other's political ideas. You just find people of the same wavelength, and which is beyond just playing together, and more of three people connecting on a very I don't want to use the word spiritual, but you just connect deeply, and it's beyond just playing music together. It's like making music together. It's like making love with music. And we all feel the same thing towards it. And that's how it started. Then I went to music school to Australia, and I was in Chennai at that point of time studying. Ayan went to Swarnabhumi Academy in Chennai. He started studying his guitar and jazz, and Srinath was studying in Delhi. Then there was this growth in our friendship and in our understanding of music, and we met again in 2019. And we could feel that we have evolved together, and we can make something very significant together. So I had a gig in Delhi, uh, Kashmir Fest in Jamia Millia Islamia. It's one of the universities there.
Mm,
And and uh, uh, a friend of mine told me, hey, why don't you just come and perform? So I just called Ayan and Chinu. There were like 3 or 4 days left for the gig. I told them, hey, do you guys want to play with me? I have written these couple of songs. Let's just see how it happens. So they were like, we don't even know what to play. I said, we're just gonna figure it out. I sent them some samples, and then I went to Delhi. We jammed those songs for like 3 days, and on the fourth day, without any sleep, we played them, and we felt that energy on the stage. That okay, this is something special. And since that day, we have been making music together, writing music together. And when Olive, we had to finally record Olive, their parts sort of the way they perceive the whole idea, I didn't have to explain it to them or spoon feed it to them. They could feel it within themselves. and we recorded the samples here in Kashmir. They left their jobs in Delhi and they moved to Kashmir, which is logically stupid, but because you don't move to Kashmir, that's the idea usually, but they did. And uh, and uh, I think that's the whole idea. Like, it's not just about one moment, it's about this whole journey, which
Mhm.
leads in how they perceive sound and how they blend into the song.
Right. I mean, it's like a relationship, really, like being in a
It
band.
is, trust me, yeah. I
Yeah,
would rather say it's like a marriage. Having a band is like getting married, and being in that very, yeah. It's pretty messed up, but it's amazing.
yeah, I can imagine. To follow up on that idea of, your band is like a very important relationship in your life for your music.
Absolutely.
And I was wondering, while the world is in lockdown and then Kashmir is in its own lockdown, how have you how have you overcome the challenges, that it takes to be a band in the 21st century and sort of create
It is.
music together apart essentially?
It is crazy. It's a crazy journey. Right before August 5th happened, and I'm sure you must know about August 5th, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so they moved to Kashmir in around July, and we thought that okay, we're gonna just write this album down. We have everything ready, and we were in my studio, and then August 5th happened, and Ayn and Srinath are here, and we're like, okay, what are we doing? Because it's not just about okay, let the world be. We're just gonna sit in our studio and make music. It's uh, it's how we were affected as a community, as Kashmiris. How this extension of uh, traumas has led to new traumas, which as a society we have been. I don't know. It was a very difficult time emotionally, and at the same time, Ayan and Shinu were right into it, and they could see the truth as well, and it was affecting them, and they could see it how Kashmiris are being marginalized, have always been marginalized and traumatized and abused. So we thought we could channel, because there's no other way to do anything about it. So we thought we should channelize it, and the songs that we had already written, or what we wrote in the studio, it felt like perfect. It was like a perfect package, in the sense that everything we felt was right there, and the album was a way to channelize uh, all those emotions which are bottled up. And till November we just recorded everything, all the tracks, all the demos we had to record. And in November, because we are an independent band, we are not backed up by a label, we
Mhm.
don't have money flowing to us, uh, and we have to survive. And literally it's so hard. uh, if I was not privileged enough, if I didn't have a family, I don't think so I would have been able to survive. So then we thought, okay, let's think of something. Then we thought, okay, since Kashmir is in complete lockdown, I think we should move to Delhi and look for gigs and do something. So we took this demo album, moved to Delhi. uh, I got in touch with the contacts which I had, and finally we got a gig, a really good one, in Piano Man Jazz Club, which is in Delhi, Gurgaon.
Mhm.
And it was a really good gig. We played for like 2.5 hours original set for a new band, and seeing people connecting to your sound, I think that's one of the reasons you're driven to do more. And then coronavirus happened, and we're like, all right, what kind of a year, kind of a fucked up year is this? uh, and since then, I mean, we then we were into another lockdown. I mean, this one was operation by a state. The other one was operation by, I mean, a universal operation, sort of a thing on people. And it, I mean, the thing with Kashmiris is that everything tragic has become comical now to us. I mean, it's like content, because I don't know how else to deal with trauma. We just make fun of it now. So I mean, this whole year has been a big practical joke to us. And then we were just sitting in our homes trying to save our asses from corona. At the same time, we're like, okay, Olive is ready. We need to finalize its video, as in like think of a release date, think of its promotion, and then finally on 6th June, I guess, something like that, we're like, okay, fine, let's finally release Olive now. And that's when Olive came out, basically. Otherwise, our second music video is stuck right now. We have no money, and we're just trying to do some crowdfunding, or let's just find some way to get money so we can, like, at least shoot and get done with it.
Mm.
So my point of explaining everything in detail is that it has been really, really hard to survive. At the same time, continuously being motivated and hopeful that, okay, no, we believe in what we are doing. We just need to sustain somehow. So it's been difficult like that for everybody. Our problems are first world problems in that case.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's just I live in America, and we're also going through our own sort of like social reckoning right now on top of coronavirus. And I live near
Yeah,
the city.
absolutely.
It is this year has definitely been hilarious
Yeah.
in a very dark way. Um, and another question I wanted to ask you was, you've also founded your own label during all of this, and I was curious as to, when you're looking to work with other artists and musicians, do you have any particular values or traits you look for in the folks that you collaborate with?
All right, so it's actually not a label yet. Uh, it is still a production house, which
Mm,
works sort of how a label works, but it's a very informal thing. I don't want to get into the business model yet, because to be very honest with you, Kashmir doesn't have a music industry,
mm-hmm,
and it's just independent artists trying to salvage whatever we can, so that at least we can leave something for the people who are going to come tomorrow ahead of us, right? So I've been an advocate of original music, that please write original stuff, please write original music, because you cannot as an artist, you should not just survive on playing cover music again and again. It's fine, I understand you want to recreate a folk song, which is acceptable to me, but render it in a way that it's a completely new uh, interpretation of it, right?
mm-hmm,
And that is one of the main criteria I have. Start developing your own original music, right? That is number one. Number two, I really want more and more and more and more female musicians to evolve in Kashmir, because there's this, like everywhere else, there's monopoly of men over the any given industry. And you look at Kashmiri musicians, it is dominated by men, and that is so annoying to see. uh, Literally, you can count uh, female artists on your, not even both fingers, just one. I don't know more than five female artists contemporary who write music. um, so that has been one of the agendas that I really wanted to get done with the studio, with the production house, that I wanted to release a whole women's album. Now uh, I don't want to like sound somebody who is taking away that, it's not because I'm just trying to be a feminist here. Trust me, it's not. It's purely from the idea that, there has to be a balance. Why are there just men artists? So that is, somehow that became one of the priorities in last couple of months. And I've been trying to scout a lot of female artists here, uh, and let's hope that album comes out. The third thing that I want to do, I want to introduce not the EDM-ish electronica music, but pretty much intelligence dance music. I would call it IDM, uh, electronica, which makes less of a commercial appeal, but more of an experimental sort of sound, which
mm-hmm,
people are not accustomed to hear. I mean, uh, technically, I specialized in experimental music, and I'm not even kidding you. I have not exercised that since I have left college,
mm-hmm,
because there is nothing that I can do here when it comes to experimental music. I've got performances written, scores written, notations written, but there are no performers.
Mm.
So either I have to leave this place and uh, go to any country in the West, and then start practicing it, which is more practically feasible. So the idea is to bring that sort of idea of music here into Kashmir. Why can't we do experimental music here? Why can't we uh, do mixed media, sound installations, sound with 10 million other different things that can be done? Till when are we going to survive as songwriters? Which I don't have issue with. I myself write songs, but that should not be it. Fourth, educating, giving music education to people, uh, which is very essential. I think these are the things that I particularly. That's the reason I also left Australia, is so that I could come back to Kashmir, at least try my bit. Might not succeed, but at least I would have tried. So that's the reason. Otherwise, my studio is in loss. Luckily, I made it within the property of my house. I have an outhouse which I converted into the studio. Uh, I have built this with an idea that it's going to be an asset tomorrow, and I have had no profit from it. It is just the dream that someday we are going to make it. And yeah, these are the reasons. I mean, that I want to do in Kashmir so badly. I
Yeah.
completely derailed from the question itself. It's just that it's always a stream of consciousness which keeps on flowing, and then yeah, never mind. It's more like a rant.
Oh, no, no. I mean, it's really interesting to hear that because it seems like, to me at least, like when I think about places that have experimental music, it's almost always in the West, and it's almost like a privilege to be able to like be
Mhm.
experimental with music. But it is really encouraging to see that there are places in Kashmir where people are experimenting with music, like yourself. And that kind of goes into one of my last questions for you today, which is I know you're working on an album right now, and this is like very far probably in the future, but you know, what sorts of sounds and genres do you see yourself experimenting with in the future, whether it's with RAMOS or just with yourself as a songwriter?
I think one of the most turning points in terms of the sound was when I started listening to progressive rock. I started listening to a lot of King Crimson, Steven Wilson, or Porcupine Tree in that sense, and then you had Radiohead, so Dream Theater. I mean, there's this huge list, and I think prog kind of connected to me on a different level. That it's not a fancy rock music. It's music for sad people. Okay, and at the same time, it's a very layman's way of saying it, but I kind of connected to the idea how prog plays with time, plays with rather than just being a punchy 3 minute. They explore each emotion in detail.
Mm-hmm.
That idea, and then this folk music that I really want to experiment more with. Slowly I'm also incorporating a lot of electronica music, so I didn't think so genres are particularly what I'm looking towards. I'm looking towards however I can take in sound.
Mm-hmm.
I might come up with a songwriter album just with a guitar, or at the same time I might work with uh, a full huge Kashmiri ensemble of Kashmiri folk musicians. So, but for the first album it's more like I would say progish kind of a sound with folk and electronic elements, and that is roughly the base in which Ramus is based. Individually, as a solo songwriter, singer songwriter, uh, it's uh, it's basically endless. There's no particular genre or set of sounds. I can go completely glitch, ambient sort of a soundtrack with no rhythm, or maybe go into having any sort of experimental sound. So it's pretty mixed. There's no clear cut, but roughly moves around prog, like experimental electronica and folk.
No, that's really great. I'm also a huge Dream Theater fan, so it's very funny to hear
Ah,
you describe it as music for sad people because
yeah.
it kind of is. Um, So last question. Do you have anyone you hope to collaborate with in the future, either locally in Kashmir or anywhere?
That's a beautiful question. I mean, there's so many artists I would love to collaborate with. In Kashmir, I think I want to, rather than having people in the sense that naming people, I think I would love to collaborate with new artists who would want to emerge, who have got, let's just say, unique style, rather than having a genre classified style. I'm more of a guy who would love experimenting with such people. I've got friends. There's this friend of mine called Faraz. His grandfather was a poet, and he works. But his style of songwriting is something that I've never seen before, and it's more like contemporary folk. Like if folk was born today, that's what it would have been. And the sense of satirical poetry he writes, he's one of the guys I actually admire, and none of his music is out, nothing at all. He just sings when a couple of people sit together. So these are the kind of people I would love to collaborate with. And when it comes to globally, I mean, there are many artists. There's this artist called, I mean, of course, a lot of people know him, Tigran Hamasyan. He's an Armenian avant-garde pianist and songwriter. I mean, man, I love what he does with his works. And mm, but these are all dreams, and it's not bad to dream. But I think if it's ever gonna be, it's gonna be really far. Guthrie Govan, if that happens ever. So yeah, I mean, these are things that I would love to dream of, but not sure if I'm in that case. I'm pretty realistic. I really want to rather grow with the people I'm surrounded by,
Mhm,
rather than just aiming and dreaming of collaborating with people that might or might not happen. So
mhm.
that's like when a dreamer turns realist for a moment. So
Yeah,
that's sort of,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a very beautiful balance in that and, appreciating where you are, but also still having like the motivation to, grow and change as a musician too.
there's Emmer Chast. He's a hip hop artist. Because the hip hop history in Kashmir is very significant, and I think you should, just if you get time or think about it, because it's very significant how hip hop has evolved in Kashmir, and it has become a voice of resistance, to a point where the first hip hop artist who came in, his studio was raided by the state forces,
Oh,
and
wow.
he eventually left music due to his personal reasons. And then the same couple of years down the line, I guess a decade down the line, somebody emerged, and his name is Emmer, and kind of took the whole movement forward. And Emmer has been doing really well. You have sorry, Ali Saifuddin, uh, Parvaz, and bands like these. Not many, but yeah, definitely significant people. Just giving my input. That's all.
Oh, no, yeah, I love it. I love having more names of people to reach out to. But yeah, it was like a very weird rabbit hole I went down, and I'm very glad I did. But
Thank you
and
so
it's good
much.
to know there are more people out there doing good work, interesting work that's challenging, and represents the culture and the identity for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for connecting, and inshallah, hopefully, we'll get to connect more.